Hello, everyone. It is Angela, and I am here to do my Game of Thrones Season 6, Episode 2 recap. This episode was called Home, and we have a lot to talk about. I'm going to try and talk fast because I have major theories at the end, so let's get right into things. The episode starts off with Bran, who we have not seen since Season 4, you guys. Season 4, that's a long-ass time, but he is north of the wall with the three-eyed raven, and he has shot up. Since we have been missing him since Season 4, he has just grown, and I'm like, oh crap, that's Bran. Okay, wonder how they're going to pull that one off. But anyway, he has a flashback to Winterfell, and he is there with the three-eyed raven, and they are watching Ned and, oh my god, Benjen, thank you, mind. They're watching Ned and Benjen have this sword fight, and Ned says something to Benjen that Jon said last season about, keeping his sword up or he would take off his head or something along those lines. Lyanna rides up, and I get really excited by this because I think I heard this, I'm not 100% certain, that they would be diving more into Jon Snow's parentage this season. But I was really excited because we're starting to be able to see, the younger side of these figures that set everything in Westeros in motion. I'm really excited that, we're experiencing these flashbacks, and I hope they continue on, not just with discovering Jon's storyline, which we will get to, his parentage, etc., but just also kind of showing other people and how the events that they did affect their children in the long run. Even though I'm not sure if that is going to be the case necessarily, it might just be focusing on the Starks and the Stark family. And we go to Mira, is that her name? I can't remember. It's Jojen's sister, right? She is looking pretty down, obviously. She lost her brother, and she hasn't been seen in a whole season. And they said that Bran is going to need her help when they leave, because obviously they are not going to be staying there. There is more in store for them. And we're going to the Night's Watch next, where Alistair still cannot find his giant keyring to unlock the door, and he's telling Davos, come on, let us in. We want to set Ghost free, and I'm like, don't even joke. Like, seriously, you need to go now. Just go. And they start breaking down the door when Ed and the Wildlings, led by Tormund, show up. And I'm like, yes, finally some vengeance for Jon Snow. They get into a little bit of a kerfuffle, especially because one dumbass thinks that he can shoot a giant with an arrow and everything will be hunky-dory. And it's not. So immediately that is quelled, which I was slightly disappointed in. I was wanting a bit of a bigger fight, which we didn't get, but that's okay, because they say, take Davos, take Alistair, and lock him up. And I'm like, all right, we can deal with that. We're moving on to King's Landing, where this drunk guy is talking shit about Cersei, and he gets taken out by the mountain, the resurrected mountain. And I kind of think that this is Cersei's attempt to return to her former power that she used to have. But I think Season 6 is going to be her downfall, unfortunately. So yes, now at the beginning of the episode, she's starting out a little strong. But when we get into things and what's actually going on in King's Landing, it kind of shows that, she's not in control of anything like she thinks she is. And speaking of not being in control, Tommen has told his guards to prevent Cersei from coming to Myrcella's funeral. She is demanded to stay in the Red Keep, and Tommen is talking to Jaime. He's pretty much doubting himself. He couldn't protect his wife. He couldn't protect his mother. Pretty much beating up on himself a little bit. And we find out that the Faith Militant, obviously, is running the show in King's Landing. Tommen leaves to go talk to Cersei, and the High Sparrow comes in. Last week I could not remember his name, so this is an improvement. And Jaime is, basically saying, what are my sins? Let me confess, and what's my punishment going to be? And he kind of tries to make a play with the High Sparrow, but then the Faith Militant walk in and they all have their clubs and everything. And the High Sparrow makes a comment that shows who's really in control behind the scenes of King's Landing. He says, "Together we can overthrow an empire." And the Lannisters are one of the mightiest empires there have ever been, arguably. So that comment is pretty telling because they are running the show right now. They have overtaken the Lannisters. They are preventing Tommen from seeing Marjorie, which he asked about. And the High Sparrow said, no. Well, she has to account for her sins first. She has to make a confession. You're not allowed to see her. They're telling the king that he's not allowed to see his wife. Tommen goes and talks to Cersei, like I said before, and basically says, I need your help. And Cersei's like, "Come here, my little pet. Come here. Come to mama." Now we're going to Meereen, where Tyrion just opens up the scene with the funniest line ever in existence. "If I lost my cock, I'd drink all the time." Amen, Tyrion. I don't understand that pain because I'm a woman, but I can pretty much sympathize that, if I were in Varys' situation or Grey Worm's situation, I would drink all the time, like every day. And Tyrion says, it's a joke. I tell eunuch jokes and Varys tells dwarf jokes, and Varys is like, "What are you talking about? I never tell dwarf jokes." Tyrion's like, "Yeah, but you think them." I just love the connection between Varys and Tyrion, good lord. I think they're so funny, and just the chemistry between them is really great, especially for some of the heavier scenes in the show. It really balances quite nicely. They are talking about the state of affairs that are going on in and around Meereen, and how 2 of the cities have fallen back into the master's hands, and Slaver's Bay has returned to the slavers. So Dany is gone and everything, all her hard work is just falling by the wayside. And yeah, it's a pretty sad state of affairs. But Tyrion thinks that if he gets the dragons on his side, maybe that will help in their cause. And so he goes down to the dungeons, and before this, we get him talking to Varys and Melisandre. Oh God, I can never say her name. You know who I'm talking about. It's not Melisandre. Missandei, there we go. And Grey Worm saying that dragons are really intelligent, smarter than people. So when he goes down to the dungeon, he's talking to the dragons like they're actual people on, a personal scale, saying when he was little, he always wanted a dragon, and he got made fun of for it because dragons had been gone for centuries. And he finally unleashes them from their chains, and they run back and hide again. And he tells Varys, "If I ever have an idea again like that, just punch me in the face," or something along those lines. I love Tyrion. God. Why do I keep saying Tyrion? It's late at night, which I always film, but, whatever. So he's the new breaker of chains, which is pretty cool and pretty exciting, and I cannot wait to see where his storyline goes. Because as we all know, I think that Tyrion has a really great big heart, even though, he is obviously shorter. But I think his motivations have always been pure, or trying to be pure, and the benefit of the people. So it's going to be really interesting to see him try and fill that Daenerys role and try and help liberate the people again. Now we're moving on to Bravos, where Arya is still getting her ass kicked by Arya Jr. And she keeps swinging even though Arya Jr. has disappeared when Jaqen shows up. And I'm like, yes, because I love Jaqen. Amen. Thank you for including him in this episode. And he's trying to tempt her by, what is your name? And she said, a girl doesn't have a name. And he's like, well, tell me your name. You can have a place to stay. You can have food. You can have your eyesight back. She still doesn't tell him. So he says, come with me. A girl is no longer a beggar. We're moving on to Winterfell. Where some crazy shit goes down this episode at Winterfell. Okay. So we start off with Ramsay and Roose in a room. And Ramsay wants to go to the wall and kill the Lord Commander. obviously they don't believe in communication in Westeros. No one has told Ramsay and Roose that the Lord Commander is already dead, and Winterfell is like not that far away. That's the closest city to the freaking wall. They can't even send a raven for God's sake. Anyway, like all over the kingdom, just dropping off little parcels, you know. Oh hey, yeah, we killed Jon Snow, and yeah, we're going on. Roose doesn't want to do that, obviously, because he thinks the North will turn on them in the blink of an eye. And Ramsay's like, hey, we just need these few houses. We can still do it. And while they're having this political type of talk, someone comes in and tells Roose that, Lady Frey has given birth to a boy. Ramsay goes over to hug his father and says, congratulations. And Roose says, you'll always be my firstborn son. And Ramsay's like, yeah, I greatly appreciate that. And then stabs him in the gut and he dies. So much for father-son bonding time, because that was over just like that. And then Ramsay wants to see his new brother and Lady Frey, and he takes him to the kennels. And I was thinking, rule number 1, never let Ramsay Bolton hold your son. But she lets him hold the son. He takes him to the kennels, lets the dogs loose on him. Okay, so now he is Lord Bolton, which is, yeah, that's freaking fantastic. I do not like Roose Bolton, ever. I've never liked him. I thought he was just really crappy and did some despicable things. But behind those despicable things, there was logic involved. Do you guys know what I mean? Like, okay, when Ramsay castrated Theon and Roose was telling him off, basically saying, hey, we needed the Greyjoys on our side, and you kind of took a bargaining chip that we had. You're an idiot. Or, with what he did with Sansa, and Roose was kind of telling him off for that again. So I haven't always liked Roose's actions, and a lot of the times they're pretty bad, but he always had that sort of political thinking in his mind, where Ramsay is just emotion, and I'm really kind of excited, kind of nervous to see where the Bolton storyline leads this season. And then we're getting on with On the Trail with Sansa and Brienne and Podrick and Theon. And Brienne is filling Sansa in about what happened with Arya. She's saying, I saw her with a man and she didn't seem to want to go. And Theon doesn't want to go with them to the wall because he doesn't want to be forgiven. He just wants to go home. And I thought that Theon's little redemption arc in the eyes of the Stark family was actually complete in this episode. And I cannot wait to see what happens when he gets back to the Iron Islands. We're moving on to Pike in the Iron Islands, and I'm like, holy shit, would this place actually still exist? Kind of those things that you forget about once you haven't seen them in a while. And Yara and Theon's dad are speaking about, their combat, and they are really great at maritime combat, but they suck at mainland combat. So, yeah, things are not going well for them. Theon's dad's brother, Theon's uncle, Euron, returns home and basically kills his brother on a bridge. While Theon's dad is trying to pass, they get in a kerfuffle and he shoves him over the side. And I was like, hashtag death to the patriarchs. So this is going to be really interesting because I don't remember the technical name for it, but they're going to have this council where they all vote on who they want to be the new commander of the Iron Islands. Obviously, at the end, Euron was telling Yara, she's not the commander yet. So I think it's going to be a race between Euron, Yara, and Theon if he ever returns home, if he gets there in time. We're going back to the Night's Watch, where we end this episode. And holy crap, you guys. All right, calm down. I know what you're going to say. So Melisandre is pretty down. She's beating herself up, and Davos goes to ask her if she can help bring Jon Snow back. And she's like, why? And, just pretty sad. And Davos is trying to build her back up. When Davos tries to build someone back up, you know that person is down in the dumps. Especially when Davos hates her. So, she's like, all my visions did not come true. The Lord of the Light, just guided me wrong, blah, blah, blah. And Davos is not asking the Lord of the Light for help. He's asking the woman who showed him that miracles can happen. So she agrees and goes in the room, and it's Davos, Ed, Tormund, and I want to say that's it. I think that's it. Anyway, I am greatly disappointed that I did not get called in to be a stand-in for Melisandre when she needed a refreshment break to sponge down Jon Snow's body. That's just me. But she's doing it, and she's saying this incantation, and it's not working. Ghost is just, catching some Z's on the side. And they all leave because she said this incantation several times. Everybody leaves, except Ghost, who's still asleep. Ghost wakes up, and Jon wakes up. And to the shock of no one. Absolutely no one. We all saw this coming, but it was still shocking at the same time. Does that make sense? I think Game of Thrones might have broken Twitter, maybe. I think it did more so last season when he got stabbed, though. I think so. Because we all saw this coming. So my half of the prediction that I had was right, that Melisandre brought him back. Just not the part about me thinking that Melisandre thought that he was the Lord of Light reincarnate. So, okay, Melisandre brings him back, and I cannot wait to see next week because everybody thinks that he's a god from the previews. And the previews also show some really exciting things. You guys, I am so freaking excited. Are we ready to get into some preview talks about next week? Okay, so obviously it shows them that thinking that, Jon is a god because he was able to come back. Now, the only other clip that I want to mention in the preview, because I might be talking about this for a moment, is Ned Stark at the Tower of Joy. Oh my god, this is happening. I am so freaking excited, you guys. For those of you that do not know, the Tower of Joy was where Ned found his sister Lyanna on a bed of blood, and she basically said, "Promise me, Ned," and then she died. Ned made this promise to her, and he rode back, and when he finally returned to Winterfell, he had Jon with him. Okay? So Ned and two of his allies are riding through the kingdom during Rhaegar's rebellion. No, Robert's rebellion. Sorry. And they finally get to Dorne, where the Tower of Joy is. There are 7 members of the Kingsguard there. Okay? Rhaegar, who's, battling Robert, is obviously not there. The Kingsguard job is one thing, to protect the king and the royal family. So now, here we are getting into Angela's theory and pretty much everybody else's theory about Jon's parentage, which is R+L = J. Rhaegar and Lyanna came together and had Jon Snow. In the show, it has made it out to seem that Rhaegar kidnapped Lyanna, and even though she was betrothed to Robert, and that's what started Robert's rebellion. But I think that Lyanna kind of went with him willingly. Obviously, there are several hints in the books and a few in this show that say she kind of went with him on her own accord. And then they may have produced Jon. Because if it's not royal blood in the castle, why would the Kingsguard be guarding the castle? It just makes absolutely no sense. So I think that Jon is Rhaegar and Lyanna's kid. That's why the Kingsguard was there. And this is going to be next week because we see the clip of Ned talking to Arthur Dayne. And Arthur Dayne says, "And now it begins." And Ned replies, "No, now it ends." Wow, you guys, I cannot wait for next week. If they keep going at this pace and revealing some questions that we've had for seasons, I'm going to be really happy with this season of the show. We are in uncharted territory here. We don't know where the show is going because the books have not been released yet up in this point, but Dan and David know where George is planning on taking the series. And so they may incorporate some things from the books, and they may incorporate their own. So that is what makes this show so great this season, because it's totally a mystery. Anyway, I really like this episode, much better than last week. I thought last week was just a little dull, even though I knew I was trying to set everything up for us. I just wasn't a huge fan. This week was amazing. Number one was no sand snakes, which I wasn't crazy about last week. And number two were the flashbacks. I hope they keep them coming this season because, like I said, I'm really interested in that storyline. Even if it's just Ned and the Stark family, I would be interested into seeing the other characters as well when they were younger, but that probably won't happen because it's Bran's flashbacks. But let me know what you thought of this episode down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time.